All right, so welcome, guys. Today is going to be a relatively short stream. Going to try and hit between 45 minutes to an hour max. Got a lot going on, but I just wanted to quickly showcase a couple fun things that I like to do with height maps specifically. There's one area of the country that's a really good precedent for capturing or for testing out your skills with height maps, but I was just going to go through the process of setting that up, as well as going through the workflow of some of the new adjustments to the UI and seeing how we can go about reading the height map in various ways and what to go about it. So, just as a precedent, we're going to grab our height map from terrain.party. And I'm sure everyone is well aware of this website. So we're actually going to go and grab this little blue square. Of course, it's really hard to see, but we're going to go over here to the United States. Yes, this is Tyler. Welcome. So there is an area over here called the Glacier National Park in Montana. It is a fantastic area where you can grab some immense amount of nature details from. So I'm going to grab this little blue square and come over here to somewhere in the middle. And I want to see the topographic imagery. So hit the map view, go to USGS topographic imagery. And this will let us see exactly where we want to place this square that we're going to capture the height map data from. So if we want to, let me just do a quick Google search to show you this area, because some of the imagery in this place is quite fantastic, specifically this area here is one of my favorite spots. I have never been to this park yet. Yeah, a belated Happy New Year. Hope you guys had a great Christmas and New Year's. Love all the tutorials, man. Started with World Critter 2 last month, and you've been a godsend for getting up and running. Thanks a ton. Oh, well, thank you very much. You're most welcome. Um, Obviously, I am not done with that main World Creator 2 tutorial series. Unfortunately, it's been really busy lately, but especially since World Creator 3 has kind of kicked off a little earlier than anticipated, but that's great because it's a much better program. But we're going to do a whole lot of uh, things around World Creator 3 instead of World Creator 2 from now on, especially with the live streams like this to get some, forthcoming feedback to and from you guys. And World Creator 3 is just fantastic. Quick note: if you don't know already, if you are a pro subscription user of World Creator, so you have the pro maintenance subscription, or if you have the enterprise subscription, then you have the current World Creator 3 alpha build for free right now. It's not, you don't have to pay anything extra to get World Critter 2 if you already own a pro version or enterprise version of World Critter 2 your current live active maintenance subscription right now. So you can go ahead and get that if you have that by chance. So I just wanted to point that out real quick before we continue on, because you can possibly grab it real quick. So I think one of the areas that I was wanting to grab from, I can't quite find this image, but this exemplifies the type of environment that is in the Glacier National Park in Montana. These types of imagery are just fantastic sorts of examples to grab inspiration from and to test your skills, of which we all would love to, myself, keep practicing more and more, because we all need more time to basically increase our skill set for World Creator 3, especially since they're going to be adding in new filters on hopefully a bi-weekly basis, is my anticipation. So we'll see. So actually, let's go ahead and bring up Google Maps. And I want to go to this area to show you guys how fantastic it is in 3D so far. So if we go to the same area that we're wanting to capture from, let's go to the satellite view, and I'm going to click the 3D view here. Particularly, it's the going to the sun mountain that I like to reference the most. But you can see the amount of color detail here, the types of talus simulation that you would get from this formation right there. Several different sorts of erosion, several different sorts of texturing techniques. There's even these horizontal striations that are not entirely sure we can implement those just yet, but there's going to be some filters that allow you to do that sort of thing, especially when terraced textures type formations come into play. So you can just see the immense amount of detail that is in these cliff faces. And this is the kind of stuff that we're going to try and implement um, in World Creator 3 today. But we're going to, today's stream is going to be based off sculpting and formate and learning how to do different formations to generate this. And next week, next Wednesday, we're going to go about texturing this because I only have time just to do the height map and import process today. And next week, we're going to texture something like this. What about World Critter 3 Octane license? That is a good question. One that I'm not entirely sure how to answer. I would believe that if you have an Octane license that has a World Creator 2 maintenance subscription attached to it, then you're potentially, I think you are in line for the pro maintenance subscription to get World Critter 3. Um, but I'm not entirely sure yet. I know that the guys have a lot of stuff to work on with Octane, with the Octane guys, as far as getting the new. They're working right now also to get the new user interface for the website, the portal stuff worked out, and they have to implement World Creator 3 more closely in Octane's ecosystem, so to speak. So I know that I believe you can get World Creator 2, but I don't know how World Creator 3 correlates with the Octane license. I think you get it, but I'm not entirely sure. I would ask that question again in the support or the question uh, server in the Discord server. I believe that's where I would go to at least ask that question. And the guys usually will respond fairly quickly. Okay, so moving on. So that area right here, this going into the sun mountain, is actually right here. We're also going to, I really like, potentially we can grab this peak here, which is really nice. And that would be this ridge line here. So I'm going to drag this box to say somewhere right over the center of that ridge line there. And let's lower this by clicking the button here down to its lowest capture size, which is 8 kilometers. So you can see the scale of each one of these mountain peaks. This is an 8 kilometer box. So that little from here to here is massive. And unfortunately, Terrain.Party will, no matter what scale you scale this up or down, the resolution of what you capture is going to be exactly the same. So it's going to be a resolution of 1081 by 1081, which isn't terrible because if you are, say, trying to capture in the US, the US graph pattern or capture pattern is every 10 meters. So seemingly every 10 meters, there's going to be a capture point or a vertice, so to speak. So as long as you kind of match up the resolution to the capture point, then you're doing good. So for in this case, for example, a 10 meter by 10 meter square is one quadrant of information that was captured. The rest of the world is based off the majority of the world is based off 30-meter capture points. So every 30 by 30 meters is going to be a capture point. So it's much wider, unfortunately. There's some new things coming out to kind of help that out, to help your lives out a little bit better, to have more density in those capture points for the rest of the world. But right now, if you want the highest grade capture points, you either have to do some magic work, go to sometimes your local government can potentially have it. The Alaskan Satellite Facility has some really accurate height maps, but Terrain.party is a really popular one to just quickly get it. So, anyway, we're going to just jump in real quick and capture this piece. So, I'm going to hit download and we'll call this Glacier National Park. Yes, for World Creator 2, the latest build of World Creator 2 is 2.4F. I'm going to save that. Going to show the folder and let's just extract it. All right, so we minimize this. So when we get that from terrain.party, we have a few different height maps to consider. We have the Aster 30 meters, which is the more global standard. We have an SRTM3, which is sometimes based off 30 meters, sometimes based off 90 meters. So you kind of have to judge based on where you're at if you even want to use that. I almost would never really use that. I would just use the Aster 30 meter. And then you have SRTM 30, which is a 900-meter capture point. This little text file here kind of explains everything that you would need to know on reading these different height maps. And the USGS in the United States is obviously 10 meters, as you see right there. The merged category here, or the merged height map, is sort of taking the Aster, the SRTM3, the SRTM30 Plus, and the USGS one and kind of blending them all together. Terrain Party has a little rough scan, not really high resolution in my opinion. No, it's not high resolution, but it depends on your capture. Like if you have a super, if you have a, let's go all the way out. I think the max is 64 kilometers or 66 kilometers. All right, so 60 kilometers. If you have a 60-kilometer capture, that resolution of this capture is still going to be 1081 by 1081. Or if you go all the way back down to 8 meters, that capture point is going to be 1081 by 1081. So the capture points make a huge difference in resolution, one. The other huge difference in resolution is the sort of the actual data that terrain.party is capturing from. Yeah, it's quite unfortunate that I really wish that if you were in terrain.party, that if you were to scale up your capture to, 60 meters, that it gave you like a huge file to filter through. Fortunately, here within World Creator 3, I would like to point out if we go to the biome tab and click the paint icon here for create custom base shape and click create to start the custom base shape process. Here in this window, I believe is where they're going to be putting in an in-house DEM data. So instead of going to terrain.party, instead of going to the Alaskan Satellite Facility, or instead of going anywhere else, that same Aster 30 meter data or the USGS 10 meter data is going to be selectable. Whoops. It's going to be selectable right here within World Critter 3. So it's going to be a really quick process for you guys to grab data from. And I'm hoping that that DEM data is going to be somewhere right here in this panel. So presumably, if you were to capture a 30 by 30 kilometer area or a 10 by 10 kilometer area, then it's going to scale whatever your capture is realistically, and based on the satellite imagery you choose. So somewhere in here will be another button for USGS or Aster 30. And then if you select that you want to use that data, there will be I'm assuming there's going to be a little pop-up window in World Creator 3 of Google Maps to show you where you want to capture from. You select the area you want to capture from, assuming it's a square. You capture it. And in addition to, this is one thing that terrain.party does not do. In addition to capturing the height data within this program, I believe they said they're going to try and get the sort of color information. So whatever satellite imagery there is color data wise, it's going to be merged with the height data on top of itself. So you can seemingly use the color information as a guide to texturing your terrain. So hopefully that is something that they will bring quite fluently into the software. Currently in World Creator 2, in order to get the color data offline, you have to try and do some trial and error of matching up where you captured your height map to doing a really zoomed in screenshot or a color capture of Google Earth. And you have to go into Photoshop, merge those together or line those up as best as you can. If you capture something like rivers or roadways and that roadway happens to be captured on height data, then it's much easier to align the color information with the height information. Rivers, creeks, lakes, islands, those things are the best for lining those height map and color images up in for World Creator 2's use. I do that now for work purposes. I all the time. So um, it's a daunting task, but it's easy. Once you get the hang of it, it's quite easy to do. And you can seemingly in Photoshop use the color information to create color masks there that you can then use those masks in World Creator 2 to enhance. And I'm going to hope that we can do that same similar pipeline here in World Creator 3. All right. So back to our weekly program here. So I have one biome and I've already gone through the process of just creating a custom base shape. And you can see I can do all these different things. And we'll cover this. If you're not used to these tools right here, we'll cover that in just a little bit. But next week, I do plan to do that 4-hour stream of covering all the basic tools to creating different sized selections, painting options, and much, much more. But today we're just going to focus on on that particular height map, as I said. So let's go ahead and we can click this plus and minus here to subdivide and basically subdivide the terrain as much as we want. But I'm going to just subdivide it at the lowest point, which is 4x4. So in this case, that represents each one of these blocks represents 512 by 512 meters because the base terrain here is based off of 2K terrain size, which is unfortunate right now, but that's going to be increased later on. And then for height maps, I'm always going to start off by clicking the flatten button here so that we can start off with a blank slate. Oh, one thing I want to do real quick is go to the terrain, select our precision to be a 1/4 of a precision level. All right, so back in the custom base shape. So with this particular subdivision, we're not going to get much information from our height map. And by that, I mean, depending on how many times you subdivide the terrain depends on how well the mesh that you're importing is going to come through. Same process with Blender, Maya, 3ds Max, all those programs to subdivide mesh in order to create tessellation, for example, or to import a height map. Same process. So we need to, let's increase the subdivisions by 2 more. So we have a simple grid here. Then we go to the import button. And we're going to go to where that was located, which I believe is right here, Glacier National Park. So in this case, we're just going to use the USGS data, which is 10 meters. So it's the highest detail here. I'm going to open this, and you can see that information that has come in. So let's actually change our lighting just a little bit so that we can see this a little bit easier. All right, let's actually the sun in this shot, I believe east is this way and west is over there. So let's do something that's a little bit from the southeast. Okay. So you can see the amount of information that came in. It's not quite as dense as we would want. And this is the sort of thing that how many times you subdivide the terrain makes a big difference. We can keep increasing the subdivisions or decreasing the subdivisions, and you'll see it's going to lower itself in quality. But once you lower the quality and try to up the quality back, it's going to, as you see, pretty much destroy the Heightmap import. I think that is a bug right now, or if it may be just part of that feature. But the more subdivisions you have, the more the original height maps detail is going to come in. So let's go ahead and increase this just a little bit. And you can see that detail is quite immense. Let's do one more subdivision so the detail is really tiny. So we've subdivided this a whole lot. We can flatten it if we want to, or we can just click import and then re-import it. Now you see the detail of the original height map that has come in. So it is actually quite detailed for what it's worth. You can see here this flat zone represents the water right here that we just captured. So sometimes satellite imagery will, depending on where you're at, it will cut through the water if the water is clear enough. But typically, because of the water, the satellite is not able to see through the water. So in most cases, this is going to be a really flat plane, which is okay. Because what we're going to do is we're going to put the water back in here, and then we're going to sculpt in the depths of this water based on our presumption of how deep this little area could be. And that way the water rendering in this program will kind of show us the what's underneath the water a little bit. So we can see that that information has come in quite nicely, and it's pretty detailed for what it's worth, but it's not obviously as detailed as we could use it. Say if we were to go back to the original subdivision, the original precision, you can see all that detail right here. That's pretty splotchy. And then we go to 8th precision, it sharpens it up with more detail. Of course, the terrain isn't going to look this peppery, so we can denoise this first to remove some of that initial detail. So let's go ahead and add a filter, and we can add a denoiser. So now you can see that it has smoothed out the terrain a little bit, which is sort of what we want. But let's just take all of these and take them down to about 50%, so to speak, so that some of that detail, maybe we take the overall strength down to 50% too. All right, back up just a little bit and maybe increase the high level precisions just a tad. All right, so we smoothed it out a little bit. And the reason why I don't want all of those little pepper details in there is because those tiny minute details with height maps, those tiny minute details is generated by World Creator 3. So it's information that's obviously not in the height map to begin with, which is perfectly fine because we want to add detail on top of this height map. But those little tiny details like that, we want the majority of the bulk details to be, we want the majority of the tiny details to be based off of the bulk details of this height map. So the bulk details of this height map is obviously the height map itself. It'll make more sense once we start adding some filters. Exactly. We won't copy paste terrain. Yeah, it's pretty amazing how drastically different this is compared to how World Creator 2 does it. I also like to point that back in the custom base shape tool here, we can increase or decrease the height scale, so we can make it quite extravagant, or we can lower it to be quite subtle. This height scale, I've mentioned this before, is going to be based off wildly the scale of your capture. So if we go into here again, we can, if we were to go into here, let's go menu and terrain. All right, so here is the terrain that we just captured, this little bit right here. And when you zoom in, we know that this peak here is roughly a little bit over 8,000 feet above sea level. And the water here, we can find one. All right, so this line, all right, so here's 4,600 feet. And let's see, should be 4,620, 4,640. Yeah. So this is 4,580, 4,560. And this one should be 40, around 4,540, 4,550. So from the water to the top is from 4,550 roughly to 8,000 above sea level. That distance is the full spread of the height map. So the water here is black and this peak is pure white. So in World Creator, the scale, the height scale of 1, if I were to put it right back to where it was. Come on, you can do it. There we go. So the height scale of 1 is going to do 100% the scale of the height map itself. So from here, the black is black to here, the white is white is going to be the full scale. Now, if you want to do the scale accurately based on how it is in real life, then whenever we get the observer tool, which tells us to put a cursor at the top of this ridge line here, it'll tell us the meters above sea level that this peak is. And then we can put the cursor here, just like in World Creator 2, to tell us how many meters it is above sea level. And sea level is justified based on the zero work plane in this software. Once you know these 2 points, then we can specify that this water line, we can move the terrain to exactly 0 for sea level in this case, but we're just trying to do it for the height maps purposes. And then we can then increase the scale up to the point where this peak, this 8,000 peak, matches the height range. So that height range is 4,000 something feet. So from here to here, we want the height range to be about 4,500 something feet. One question: how can you be sure you have the exact height of the mountains? I think I just answered that question after you or before you had already asked that question. That's how you would do it in World Creator 2. Okay, good. Yeah, that's how you do it in World Creator 2 now. You just have to go to wherever you're getting your elevation data and you're verifying those two distances. So once you know the range from here to here based off Google Maps or wherever else you're getting your maps from, then we can scale that here appropriately within World Creator 2 or World Creator 3 in this case. And that's where you would do. I'm hoping eventually we can pick a like a let's say we pick a selection of tiles or something, and we say, hey, this selection of tiles and is based off sea level, so it'll snap to a 0 ground plane, and that'll move the entire terrain to always snap to that position. And then we can then adjust. Hey, I want the rest of the terrain to be scaled off of this point. So if we say this point, type it in a list is supposed to be 8,000, or sorry, supposed to be 4,000 something feet above this point, then it'll proportionally scale the whole terrain. I'm hoping it's that easy. It may not be that easy, but at least we know how to scale it appropriately. All right, so the next thing that I want to do is go ahead and set the water line. And the water is outrageously too high. Let's get off of this real quick. All right, so water offset. Let's get it in the rough ballpark first so that we know exactly where. All right, so somewhere, let's zoom down here. All right, so we want to move our water to as close as possible to where the flat part of the height map is. That way we know where our water line is in relation to where we're sculpting. Greetings, Reiko. Welcome. All right, so you can click the slider to move it up and down, but if you also click and hold the numbers, then I'll move them down in smaller increments. Almost had it there. One more, right there. So about right here, can see based on the reflection is exactly where the water is on this particular height map. I've just went based off of the height information around the edge. All right, perfect. So now that we know where the water is, let's go ahead and turn it off so that working is a little quicker. Because with water enabled, the rendering engine works a bit harder and it's not as easy to basically work. So we could, so there's a few things that we can do. So height maps do work with biomes. So we can add another biome and you see that does some funky stuff, but the second biome's operation is set to overwrite. So we can do a few things. We can set it to none, which is not going to overwrite it in terms of its detail generation. But with the operation set to none, we can still add filters. So if I were to add the mountain filter, we can quickly add mountains and cratered cliffs. You get the idea. We can keep adding more and more pieces. We can also, because of that, add textures and whatnot. So by setting the operation to none is seemingly says that this biome has zero height dependencies, or it won't affect the volume of the mesh as a whole. Even if you go into create custom base shape and select create and subdivide it, and if we were to select this and try to increase this, you can see it's not moving. And of course, that's because the operation is set to none. If we were to say flatten this again, if we were to set the operation to add, it doesn't do anything yet, but setting it to add and making sure that you have flattened your custom base shape, because this is what it looked like before. And if we flatten it, it brings it back to the original sort of height map. But now that the operation is set to add, we can go to the custom base shape paintbrush. And this time, if I were to say paint right here in the middle of our water, and I were to widen this a little bit, we can raise and lower it. So this is seemingly what I am going to do. So let's flatten this back. And now I'm going to try and just paint in close to the edge to start off with. I want to leave a little bit of a gap between the, whoops, I messed up there. I can erase it in just a second. I want to leave a little bit of a gap between the selection and the edge so that there's some sort of bleed effect where I can remove and add detail. So holding, nope, that's not what I wanted to do. All right, let's try this again. So we're going to paint across the edge. And with holding control, we can add to our original selection. So always make sure you are holding control. Otherwise, you're going to accidentally, you can see there's a bug there, accidentally select a little bit too much. All right. So over here is a little harder to see, but if I come to the top, I can see that it hooks around just a little bit here. But that's okay. We're just trying to get a general sense of where we're wanting to select. And then I can hold control still and scroll on the mouse wheel to change our selection size. We're going to select this. And we're going to keep selecting. Now, there will be a really cool feature. We've talked about this before, or I don't know if it was my idea. I'm going to claim that it's my idea because I think I brought it up in the last dev vlog stream that I did with the devs. We talked about new ways of selection. And one of the ways that I brought up that would be really nice to have as a selection is select based on slope. So if I were to select this flat plane here and say, I want to select everything that's, 0 degrees or in slope, it's going to obviously select everything down here. or if I want to select everything based on a height map. So I want to do a mask, a heat map mask, and select everything based on a height map, that would work too. So I'm going to hold control and do everything that's in the sun. Now the sun is right here posing a problem for me because I can't see where the rest of the terrain is over here. But if you, one cool trick is that if you do not deselect out of this and keep it here, keep this icon open, go to the sun tab and turn so that you can see more, go back to this tab. And as long as you still had that there, your selection stays. So your selection is remembered as long as the custom base shape, box is still on, so to speak, so that you don't lose anything. All right. So I wonder if this is a little piece of water too. Let's have where is it? Is. All right. So I captured a little bit of water there too. And that was terrible. Oh no. I just messed it up. The whole thing up. Shoot. That's a bug by going out there. All right. I'll just do this haphazardly quick. Mistakes were made. Oh my goodness. Let's just lower that one. Let's go ahead and lower this one just a little bit. So you see, I'm going to lower this just a tad so that we can see a body of water below. And that's seemingly what I was trying to do on the other side. But there we go. But I obviously goofed. So let's see how fast I can just do this. Because now everyone is thinking. Oh, and to remove. So hold down control and hold down left mouse button to add detail, like I'm doing here. If you want to remove detail, then you hold down the right mouse button. So right mouse button removes the selection. This is one reason why we brought up several times that having the ability to make a selection and say right clicking in that selection and saving it in a layer system to where that selection here that I just painted is always there. It never goes away no matter what you do. So that is one fantastic feature that we would all love to have. Now, we can spend hours, obviously, sculpting the basin of this lake, and that's exactly what we're going to do, but not today. We're going to spend more time in another live stream, more casual live stream of just rough sculpting everything. Because I really want to make this particular terrain something of a little mini live series. So, like I said, the next Wednesday, we're going to go through techniques to texturing this particular terrain because there is a lot of ways that we could texture this particular terrain. Like I said, this area of the country has an immense amount of texturing detail in this mountain. All right, finally, we have the lake selected for probably what seems the third time. All right, we're going to hold down shift and drag down, but we're going to scroll up on the mouse wheel to smooth out our selection a little bit. So let's just drop it about 5 meters. All right, let's drop it about 3 meters to start. All right, now we're going to go back again, but in the middle. So we lower the terrain a bit more. And now we're going to make the depths a little bit deeper. So this is just a staggered technique. So you select everything, you lower it a little bit. You select everything, you lower it a little bit. And it's a great way to add almost a custom layer system. So we can even basically have our selection here a little bit smaller. And I can try to, whenever you do these selections as well. So you see how right here there is an erosion line, or right here there is an erosion line, or this one's a really good example. This is a big erosion line right here. So seemingly that erosion line is going to come right through here probably, or spill out right through here. So if we select, say we select a little bit of this right here, we can ensure that all of this is lowered to a degree to exemplify that water running off the mountainside here and eroding the edge a little bit so that we can see how well it carves into the side of the terrain before it gets into the lake. Same thing here. If we want to just add a little bit of pop right here, or right here, add a little bit of pop. So these are some of the things that you can definitely do, kind of capture where these water points are entering, and it'll help shape the water underneath better. Because like I said, since we don't know what the topography is doing underneath, we kind of have to make assumptions, but we can make assumptions based on where all that rushing water is. Right here, I can almost guarantee there was a road at this point. You can see this road coming around here. So there's probably not a lot of erosion going to be happening right there because mankind is going to maintain it. So same thing right here. I don't think I want to mess with that too much because, all right, so water here on the left side is coming right through here, swirling around this creek bed. It looks like the topography is going either this way or coming around this bend and filtering out into this little mini lake. We're just going to focus on this particular lake today. I think I'm going to add a slight cut right here and a slight cut right here. And of course, we want this to have a tiny little piece right through there. I'm assuming that this is probably also a little bit of a road that comes around, and we can verify this in Google Earth too, but we're just going to do it here. So in this one, let's widen the effect a little bit, but also let's widen it just ever so slightly. There. All right, so now let's make a new selection and just do the bulk fat guys here. So this is where the main piece is going to be. All right. So we're going to obviously sculpt more of this, but we're going to smooth it out since it's underwater and we've created this sort of terraced piece underneath the water. If we add a smooth filter, a really strong smooth filter, and set it to be right at the water line, then what we've made here will just be blurred out and blended in together quite extensively. Could we have a fill selection tool based on height? Yes, that is something that I mentioned earlier in today's stream, but also in a different stream. So being able to say, hey, I want to select this square here and select everything based off that square or about that slope, then they said they're going to implement that. So to answer your question, yes, they are going to do a fill selection based off your height, as well as your slope, as well as angle. So there's going to be an angle select too. So whatever mesh is facing a certain directionality of the terrain, you can select everything based off that direction. And you can, blend it out. So if you want to say you want a slope that is exactly 45 degrees, but you're blending out to select, within 5 degrees on either side of 45 degrees. So you'll have that option too. Same thing with, the slope tool, the slope distribution method here does the same exact principle, but they're going to bring that to the selection process as well. All right. So now if we go back to the environment tab and click water, And let's turn water clarity pretty low. So now instead of it being just a flat plane, we have some depth to this water. It makes a lot of sense now. So we're going to be bringing in. We're going to Monday. I'm hoping to have more of a chill stream, and Tuesday I'm hoping to have the super long basic beginners course stream, and then Wednesday we're going to texture this. So Monday hoping keyword hoping to have a chill stream where we just work for a few hours sculpting this as well as doing some more sculpting throughout this particular terrain. Okay. So one thing that we could do, like I mentioned before, we've created another biome. So what would be the purpose of creating for a height map another biome? Well, in this case, not a whole lot with the fact that we can't do custom masking for biomes. Now there is a masking system for biomes. So we could do a biome seed and click this button to see the different biomes. So if we were to, for example, add a second biome and put it, oh, here's the second biome and do it like this, set this to none. Okay, so in this case, we have a green biome and a purple biome or a magenta biome, which is represented by these two biomes right here. So seemingly right now we can make these biome masks, but we can't custom paint these masks yet, which is something that's going to be coming. I think they've said that's something that's going to be added at the beginning of February or sometime in February. I know exporting is coming in February. I think importing textures are coming in February. And I'm hoping that this is one of the things that are coming in February too, where we can paint in a mask of, any mask that we want. Same thing with the selection tool, being able to save the selections, but we can, say we want to, paint in where this biome is. And that biome, particularly for this terrain, is going to be very handy because I'm wanting to create different biomes for different texture groups. So we're going to paint in a biome for a certain texture for the mountain or a certain biome for down below. But fortunately, in this case, if we go to back to Google Earth and satellite view and 3D view, we can kind of figure out a couple things here already. Let's rotate this. One, the texturing for this particular terrain is almost exclusively helped by the fact that the texture changes by height. You can see that the texture or the greenery here is all on the lower portions of the terrain, and the rocky substances and scarce brush and sand and dirt and stuff is all on the steeper slopes as well as the higher portions of the terrain. So next week, it is going to help us to texture to a degree where we can say, hey, all of the greenery in here is based on a concave, dip. And that's helpful in one regard, as well as being able to texture this based off the fluid simulation or the fluid distribution. We can do a lot of different things with the fluid distribution system. But, another thing that helps us here is slope. Everything that is a really steep slope in this case is, really rocky and nothing's going to grow there. While everything on a subtle slope and obviously everything that where water and moisture is collecting, which is in the basins, which is the concave areas, is going to be green and plants and wildlife and stuff. Like this, for example, we can texture everything here based. Oh, by the way, this is World Creator 3. No, I'm just kidding. This isn't World Creator 3. This is Google, but you can see the immense amount of texturing that we could grab from Google if we just had the color map from Google within World Creator 3. But here you see we can do it the green based off a height. We can do a rock based off a fluid distribution. And we can do these little snow pieces based off a concave, area as well. So ultimately, this terrain really helps us in its nature by being able to texture this terrain as is without the overall need to painting in biomes custom wise. But for me, having biomes is more about, for a height map, is more about organization than it is about um, actually texturing, because if we go to the main biome here and don't even regard these two biomes, we can do everything that we want in these two biomes. Plus, you just saw that what was underneath the water disappear and it came back. That's another benefit of biomes. Is say you want to sculpt your height map, but you don't want to destroy, in quotation marks, the height map's effect on the terrain. Okay, so just do what we just did. Make a biome, do your sculpting on your biome, and make sure that the operation is selected or set to add. And you can do all your sculpting without harming the original height map. You can hide it and then go back and see the original height map. So it's a quite powerful tool in that sense for organization. Same thing goes to texturing. Now we can go and filtering. We can go to the main biome here. We can add filters and see that we've got a filter of a denoise filter to start off with. Of course, all the filters and textures that you make are non-destructive. But say I want to, by organization, have all of my green textures, all of my wet textures and things like that on, this biome. And I want all of, that one's, oh yeah, that was a bug. Yeah. No, that's not a bug. I realized what happened. All right, 1 second. So say we want all of our green textures to be on the green biome and all of our rocky textures to be on the red biome or magenta biome. So that's one way of just organizing yourself, because then if you just texture in the main height map biome here at the top, right here when we click the texture tab, I mean, we can seemingly have a huge laundry list of textures, and it'll be kind of hard to organize yourself through the system. So like I said, having biomes with the height map is more about organization than it is about actually the need to have biomes. The only real need to have biomes for a height map in this case is if you're wanting to paint in a certain custom texture for yourself, paint in a biome, and two is so that you can do these called custom sculpting technique without harming the height map. Hope that makes sense, and I hope you guys like that particular feature, because for me, that's almost a godsend of a way of sculpting, and it's so much faster than ever before. Okay, so back to this particular biome. So the reason why when I selected this biome, it cut that off that's because that's where the biome is located. The green biome is located here. So all that sculpting information that we painted here is seemingly not there. If we were to select, because it's masked out. Now, if we were to select this one, we can see that mask is still there. So we do not want that. What we would want in this case is if we were to have this biome within this biome and set that to none. So what that'll do is add another layer of sculpting if we wanted to. Say we have this layer is sculpting, we can select add, create, flatten. And now with this biome, we can do really minute, really tiny, minute sculpting measures, which we almost certainly will later on, because the one thing that you have to keep in mind with height maps in World Creator 2 or World Creator 3 is that reference is key. Always have your imagery up, always know what it's supposed to look like. That way, when you do all these sculptings and texturings, texturing, it's going to help you make a more accurate piece. So with this, I'm not going to do much with the filters in the main biome just yet. We may do that in a little bit, but we could do a few things in this sub biome here. We can obviously add, we can add mountains to bring in some of that rock detail a little bit. And I definitely liked the cratered cliffs because it helps this shear. But with the crater cliffs, we only want those to be distributed based off a really steep slope. So we added the slope distribution, and now we're going to crank that all the way up to 90. And let's lower this a bit so that the craters or the crater cliff is only affecting these really steep portions, which you can see is between, let's do it between 80, but yeah, somewhere between 80 and 90. Same thing for the mountains. For the mountains, we also want those to be based off a slope because the rocks are going to have, the rocks in this case are going to have a lot of influence. So we want that to also be based on a top value of 90. And this time, let's try and select somewhere around 40. Let's see where we're at here. We do this, you see the information is being lost. So if we do about, ooh, that's really steep. Let's also do at about 86 and let's blend it out by clicking the numbers. Let's lower the portion about to 40, or sorry, 84, just to add a little bit of bleed. And for the mountains, I definitely don't want them that strong. So we could lower the max angle to be about 70. Min angle, we definitely don't want that. All right, maybe we can, yeah, let's increase that back to 90 and lower the min angle. The min angle is what's also the type of, the min angle and max angle look at the angles on the terrain and it does the justification based off those angles. So any angle between, let's say 40 degrees and 90 degrees are the only ones that are going to be influenced by the generation process, but it'll still be blended in quite nicely. And let's lower all of these down to about 75%. All right. So we are working a little bit more, helping these out. Do you guys have any questions? Because we unfortunately are about to wrap up this particular portion here pretty soon. So I wanted to answer any final questions before we end the stream today. Again, I'm sorry that it was a really busy day and still busy. So I'm just having to end a little bit earlier than I anticipated. But I do have a few minutes to answer any final thoughts. If you guys have any final thoughts, maybe that one doesn't look so great. Let's do. So we definitely don't want to use anything like distortion or deflate in this unless you're wanting to create some wacky terrain on your own. But we're wanting to enhance the sort of terrain that's here on its own. So I saw it a second ago, hills. So we can add hills. Well, let's do hills based off height. Let's do hills all the way to the bottom. And let's lower it until we can kind of see the hill line. About right there. I don't think actually we can see some of it affecting here. It's not affecting it enough to where I feel like it's safe to use. Definitely in this particular terrain, we'll do this for our last filter. If I were to find it. So the smooth filter is not here, but there was a roughness filter test. There we go. So the roughness kind of adds some, fake sort of sedimentation quite drastically. Actually, instead of this, because roughness is quite heavy right now, let's just add straight sedimentation. And that's going to help. Yeah, there we go. That is going to help us smooth out this bottom just a little bit. So crank that all the way to, here we go. So crank the height for the sedimentation all the way to the bottom. And let's lower it till we can see the line. All right, so we see the line is right here. So let's take this top value and lower it even more. All right. We can see the sedimentation here. If we were to blend it together a little bit, and then turn off, lower the length down just a tad to about 2.5. That way it's not cutting away too much. And let's lower the general strength some. Okay, so you see the sedimentation has carved a bit too much away from the side here. So let's then just lower this value a tad bit more. Keep lowering it till it's underneath the water line. You can see it's underneath the water line here. And then increase the top blending just a tad. All right. So now we've smoothed out the bottom just a little bit. You can see it's really subtle. And since we did that below the water line, we have kept our water line profile, which is exactly what I wanted to do. Okay. So we've been going on for about an hour. We're going to save this. We can just save it in there as Glacier National Park. Perfect. And now we're going to continue this next week. Perhaps we can continue this on Monday and plan for texturing this on Wednesday. So thank you guys for watching. I look forward to seeing you guys next week. If you have any other questions or want to become part of the community a little bit more, you can go to World Creator's Discord channel to be involved with World Creator 3 if you have the software. Again, if you are a pro or enterprise maintenance subscriber right now, then you can get access to that to World Creator 3. And so we are going to, again, continue this next week, and I hope to see you then. Thank you, guys.